Welcome to the Hoffman Show on Talk Radio 570 KVI, your home for the politically homeless, streaming live at KVI.com and the KVI app. If you want to be part of the most dangerous show on the airwaves, call or text the Warrior Injury Law Studio line at 206-421-5757. That's 206-421-5757. Coming up this hour, Attorney General Nick Brown calls anybody investigating the fraud here in Washington racist vigilantes. I should add that to my Twitter bio. But before we get to any of that, time for your daily dose of adrenaline.
You want me to stick this into my heart? Are you f***ing nuts?
When you get called out, you have a choice. You can admit it, fess up, you can lie, you can obfuscate, or you can go, nope, they're lying. Katie Wilson has been the mayor of Seattle for what, 3 days, 4 days? And she's already in the middle of her first scandal. And rather than saying, yep, that was me, her and Sean Barnes, the police chief Wiggum we have here in Seattle, and Erica Evans, who is our new Seattle city attorney, would rather say everybody else is lying, it's misinformation, it's disinformation, don't believe your lying eyes, than admit they had an unpopular leftist policy that they tried to put in place, they got called out on it, and instead of fessing up to it, they are saying, nope, don't believe your lying eyes. Even after the emails that show that they did it went public. Here's the thing I don't understand. You won on a socialist landslide of the 30% of Seattle that actually voted. You have all this socialist support. You are riding Mamdani's coattails. You have a leftist police chief. You have a leftist Seattle city attorney. You have a left-leaning city council. You have socialist city council members. You have a Democrat-controlled legislature, which includes socialist members. Why not just admit you're doing what you're doing? That's the thing I don't understand. This policy that Katie Wilson and Erica Evans and Sean Barnes want to put in place has been tried before. What is it? For those of you who may have missed the show yesterday, there was a directive that came out from Sean Barnes from the Seattle Police Department. And it said, we will no longer be arresting criminal drug users for open-air drug use. Instead, we will be diverting them into treatment. On the Seattle website, the seattle.gov website, it says this is their plan. Katie Wilson has said this is her plan. Erica Evans has said this is her plan. So why now, when you get called out for it, are you saying, nope? And my theory is because you know exactly how unpopular it is. And you're trying to stay popular. In addition to that, you know it's going to fail. You want to do it because it makes your liberal bleeding heart feel better, but you know it's going to fail. Otherwise, why not just say, yeah, we're socialists. Yeah, we're liberals. Yeah, we're going to do it. That's what doesn't make sense to me about this entire story. So let's back up. Our friend Andrea Suarez from We Heart Seattle publishes pieces of an email in a post on social media talking about how now Seattle Police Chief Sean Barnes has sent out a memorandum to the entire department telling them they are now going to divert these drug offenders into treatment from the LEAD program, the Law Enforcement Assisted Diversion Program, rather than arrest them. Now, I know a lot of you who listen to the show know people who are in recovery. You know people who have recovered, and unfortunately, there's some people who also lost people who never recovered. Every single person I know who got clean told me that they had to hit rock bottom, and for a lot of them, it was going to jail. Do you know the average person who actually gets clean has to go to detox or AA or any of these things or get into treatment or rehab a minimum of 7 to 8 times before it actually holds? Yeah, that's for real. And you have to have the motivation to want to do it so that you won't fall back again. Now, jail is a very effective way of doing that. That's where you dry out. Maybe you can get some help. Maybe you can be clear-headed. Maybe it can help. But instead, these Looney Tunes want to send you to the LEAD program. The LEAD program I met with years ago. When I was running for Seattle City Council, I met with Lisa Dugard, who started the program. Lisa Dugard, I said, okay, let's see the data. Tell me how successful you are, because she said I had it all wrong. They were very, very successful. And she said, well, I can't show you the data. I'm like, why? Is it top secret or something? No, I mean, it's a case-by-case basis. I'm like, great. How many people did you get into recovery this year? How many people are no longer prolific offenders? How many people are leading a productive life? They couldn't provide that data for me. They had every excuse in the book. I was meeting with them at their offices. They had every excuse in the book except for the actual reason why they didn't have the data. This program is a failure. It releases violent, prolific offenders onto our streets through the revolving door of Seattle's justice. But this is the direction they have chosen to go. So, SPD, because they got this onslaught of people like me saying to them, hey guys, can we see this email? Is this directive true? Is it not true? Because Andrea's post went viral locally. So what happens? SPD releases their own communications about this thing and the email itself. Here's what they wrote. Media partners, thank you for asking about Chief Sean Barnes' email communications from January 1st, 2026 to SPD officers and professional staff around a recent city attorney's office policy clarification regarding the prosecution of public drug use cases in 2026. Okay, so right there, it didn't come from the mayor, it came from the city attorney. To be clear, nothing has changed when it comes to police continuing to make drug-related arrests in Seattle. Okay, that should be the end of it, right? And since there has been some misinformation over the weekend related to the email communication, we want to provide you and your readers, listeners, or viewers with a few factual takeaways. SPD has not changed its policy around public drug use. SPD will continue to enforce Seattle's laws. Our mission remains unchanged, Chief told officers in his email, and we fully support programs and policies aimed at reducing recidivism and breaking the cycle of repeated criminal justice involvement. Seattle police officers will continue to make arrests for drug-related charges if they have probable cause. The city attorney's office will then implement their policy regarding prosecution next steps. If the arresting officer has identified unique circumstances that can make diversion ineffective, the officer and prosecutor can coordinate on other options, including prosecution. Below, you can see Chief Barnes' full communication. And here's where the lamestream media stopped. They didn't read the email that came after. They read the press release from the Seattle Police Department. Because here's what Sean Barnes' email actually says. Good afternoon, and Happy New Year, colleagues. I'm truly excited for the year ahead. Grateful for the opportunity to continue our important work together. 2025 was an outstanding year for our department and for the safety of our city. We achieved a record number of new hires. That's not true, but okay, we'll let them have it. 165 new police officers joined our ranks. I notice he doesn't mention how many retired, but okay. We saw substantial decreases in both violent and property crime. That's not true, but okay. Our homicide rate declined at a level we haven't experienced since before the pandemic. Okay, well, it was at record highs, so it really had nowhere else to go, but okay. As we begin a new year, new policies and procedures are inevitable. Whoa, whoa, whoa. I thought you just said that was misinformation. I thought you just said there were no new policies or procedures, especially given the shifting political landscape our city has grown accustomed to. So what you're saying is you have a new city attorney, you have a new mayor, so there's going to be new policies. With that in mind, I want to inform everyone of an important update from the city attorney's office. Wait, I thought nothing changed. The lamestream media sucks because so many of them stopped reading after the press release and didn't read the actual email. Effective immediately, all charges related to drug possession and or drug use will be diverted from prosecution to the LEAD program. What part of that was unclear? That's literally what Andrea Suarez said. That's literally what we said. That's literally what the chief of Seattle's police department said. And yet, you've got the left out there covering for it. Most of the lamestream media out there today and last night were saying this was a nothing burger. It's no big deal. Nothing to see here. They basically, effectively decriminalized drugs in Seattle. And we've tried this before. Do you remember a few years ago we had the Blake decision? Where basically what the case was about was they found drugs on a person and they couldn't prove that it was for that person's personal use. So you can just use the Austin Powers defense of, I swear, baby, it's not mine, and get away with it. You remember that? And then that effectively, thanks to the Washington State Supreme Court, decriminalized drugs in the entire state. Overdoses skyrocketed. Overdose deaths skyrocketed. Property crime from drug-related criminals skyrocketed. Homeless encampments exploded. And we're seeing the same thing now. Andrea Suarez from We Heart Seattle has done an amazing job documenting how now that these homeless drug addicts know nobody's going to do anything about it because Katie Wilson's going to be the mayor and Erica Evans is going to be the city attorney, they are now coming back to their old haunts in parks, and these homeless encampments are expanding all over the city of Seattle. What I do not understand, it says clear as day here in the email that this policy was ordered by the chief to officers, and they're calling it misinformation? They're calling it disinformation? Let's read it again. Effective immediately, all charges related to drug possession and or drug use will be diverted from prosecution to the LEAD program. You're not going to prosecute anybody. All instances of drug use or possession will be referred to the Law Enforcement Assisted Diversion LEAD program, a program designed to redirect low-level offenders in King County from the criminal justice system into supportive social services. What exactly was the lie? What exactly was the misinformation? What exactly was the disinformation? And here's something else. Seattle police got a lot of paperwork to do, and there's not that many of them. And they don't want to spend their time doing paperwork. So you know what they're not going to do? Actually do this. Because they don't want to fill out the paperwork for it, and there's not enough of them. If an individual fails to comply with the LEAD program, traditional prosecutorial measures will apply. Great. Well, it never has beforehand. You guys never actually prosecute anybody. You just release them and release them and release them, and the cycle continues. Why do you think this is going to work now? But Katie Wilson and Erica Evans and Sean Barnes are such cowards. That's right. You heard me say it. Cowards. That they can't even fess up to what is in their own email. Now, Katie Wilson tried something interesting yesterday, and I started laughing because I saw exactly what she was trying to do. She came out with the local media, and she issued a statement in response to all this, basically saying, wasn't my idea, but her quote was, if I have a policy change to announce, I'll announce a policy change. Are you trying to be Sydney Sweeney there? If I got something to say, I'll say it? Is that what she's doing there? Was she trying to do a Sydney Sweeney?
You've made a really good case for keeping your thoughts and your life separate from that work. But the risk is that, there's a chance that somebody will get some idea about what you think about certain issues and feel like, I don't want to see Christy because of that. Like, do you worry about that?
No.
The criticism of the content, which was basically that maybe specifically in this political climate, like, white people shouldn't joke about genetic superiority. Like, that was kind of like the criticism, broadly speaking. And since you are talking about this, I just wanted to give you an opportunity to talk about that specifically.
I think that when I have an issue that I want to speak about, people will hear.
Okay. Sydney Sweeney, cool when she did it. Katie Wilson, just sounds like you're ducking the question. Just sounds like you're ducking the question. Because you're a child in a job meant for a grown-up. I'm surprised her mom didn't drop her off for her first day of being mayor in a booster seat. Yeah, I saw that meme going around. Some of you sent it to me. It was pretty funny. Real leaders say, yes, this is my plan. We're going to try it out. Why is Erica Evans and Katie Wilson ducking this? Because they know it's unpopular. And that means any crime that happens, any resulting story that happens is on them because they imposed this policy. Let's go over the things that happened right before Katie Wilson got inaugurated. Ross Dress for Less announced that they are fleeing downtown Seattle. How many retailers are left of the major big box stores in downtown Seattle? 3 people were injured during early morning shootings. Then you had this one. A woman with fentanyl felony warrants was arrested after running from the cops. Wait, I think drugs were just a victimless crime. Let's divert her for treatment. Because after all, she's just somebody who has a drug problem, even though she's got multiple felonies for really, really bad stuff. Sure, let's just divert her for treatment. Here's the stuff that she had warrants out for. Ready? $15,000 for dangerous drugs, unlawful possession of a firearm, escape from justice and theft, and possession of a stolen vehicle. Let's just divert that person for treatment, right? Even though they had multiple felony warrants, just divert them for treatment. Do you see the inherent flaw with this? Do you realize how you're decriminalizing everything that's happening on 3rd Avenue and Jackson? Everything that's happening on 3rd and Pine, Pike and Pine, all in the downtown corridor. Katie Wilson, this is part of the plan. This is what she wants to do. She wants to honor the people who don't contribute anything to society. She said as much during her inauguration speech.
I want to live in a city that honors what you're doing when you're not making money.
Yeah, let's honor the drug addicts. Woo! Yeah, let's honor them.
I'm not talking about watching Netflix, by the way. I mean the time that you spend with your kid at the playground or caring for a sick friend. I want to live in a city that celebrates the labor that people perform voluntarily. Like someone, the transit ferry.
Who is this transit ferry person? Do you know she got sworn in by the transit ferry? Mike, I looked this up. This is a actual person. There's some person who's a big transit advocate. They call him the transit ferry. I didn't know the transit ferry had legal authority to swear you into public office. What'd you swear in on one of those things you dispense change with when you're an old conductor on a train? How about a strap from an old trolley car? Is that what we're swearing you in on now? What kind of nonsense is this? We're not a real city. We're the laughing stock of the U.S. Unbelievable to me. And then what happens is Cam Higbee and Jonathan Cho go and confront the mayor about some of the things she's done, some of the things she said, including about the Somali fraud that's alleged here in Washington as well as Minnesota.
Mayor, why don't you call for an investigation into Somali daycare fraud? Who are you calling extremist influencers?
Too much space. Okay, we need a little space, guys.
I just want to ask her a few questions.
You said that everyone has a place in Seattle.
This is your city. That means that you belong here.
Do, as you put it, extremist influencers have a place in Seattle?
Well, he's right here, so I guess so.
There's one right here, so I guess so. She's pointing at Jonathan Cho, saying that to Cam Higbee. You know what? I would prefer that to what happened in the last 24 hours. I would prefer she say, yeah, I don't think criminalizing drug behavior works. And this is what I'm going to do because I won an election, nana poo poo. But she's not a strong leader. She's not a strong person. She's not a person of conviction. And even though her policy is terrible, horrible, disastrous, will result in more homeless people and more overdose deaths and more crime, I would prefer she have the courage of her convictions to stand by them rather than calling everybody else a liar. Misinformation, disinformation. It's going to be a really, really, really long 4 years. Now, coming up at 5:30 today, we're actually going to have Mike Solon on the show from the Seattle Police Officers Guild. He's going to weigh in on this because they're all calling him a liar now, even though he was reading the same email we just read to you. Tomorrow morning, during the morning ride with Phil and Zach, City Council member Bob Kettle will be on the show to weigh in on all this. But at the end of the day, the buck stops with the mayor. The buck stops with the city attorney. The buck stops with the police chief. And all three of them who are committed to this course of action in writing, in what they have said in the past, are ducking responsibility for what is about to have tragic, lethal consequences for the people living on the streets, the addicts of Seattle, and the people they hurt who are the tax-paying citizens here in Seattle. We've been down this road before. We know how it ends. Don't say I didn't warn you. Lots more to discuss as the show continues, my friends, including how the fraud allegations are mounting here in Washington. Yet Nick Brown says we're all a bunch of racist vigilantes for exposing it. Tell you all about it when we come back. You're listening to the Ari Hoffman Show on Talk Radio 570 KVI. For the better part of a week now, ever since Nick Shirley's video went viral on social media, I think it's up to 300 million views across platforms right now, which is insane, exposing the fraud in the daycare system in Minnesota. People like myself have been digging into alleged fraud here in Washington. How have we been doing it? We've been digging through the DCYF, the Department of Children, Youth, and Family Services website. We've been cross-referencing it with the Washington State Checkbook, which shows you exactly how much money these organizations get from your taxpayer dollars from the Washington State Legislature. And then some journalists like Cam Higbee, Jonathan Cho, Carlene Johnson, Kristen Magg, and a few others have been going out and checking out the addresses. Now, we know some of these locations, Jonathan Cho, Cam Higbee, and others have shown up to, and they said, nope, there's no daycare here. There's never been a daycare here. And yet they're getting millions of dollars. These are not places that they're just a mailing address. These are places that it is very, very likely might be engaging in the same fraud we saw down in Minnesota. But if you ask anybody around here about that, they're going to deny it. Bob Ferguson backed the Somali community. Katie Wilson had the first speaker at her inauguration, a Somali immigrant, talking about how her community is being demonized and persecuted by people researching this. Do you guys remember the 1990s, early 2000s? The hottest shows on TV were the investigative journalism shows where they confronted people in the street. Jesse Jones, Problem Solvers, all those kind of shows. Those were the things people wanted to watch. They look forward to them. But now when you do the exact same kind of journalism, you get demonized as a vigilante. You get demonized as a racist. We give Chris Daniels from Como News a lot of grief on the show about the Sonic stuff. But when he targets you for an answer, he will press until he gets that answer, which is why we continue to play his stuff, even though we make fun of the Sonic stuff from time to time, because there are so few reporters left who still do this. In fact, I'd say the only outlet that still has the reporters that do this is Como News. So he ran into the Attorney General, Nick Brown, who's been demonizing all of us, and he asked him about the people who are investigating the fraud in Washington. And here is what the Attorney General, whose job it is to protect the Washington taxpayers' money, said.
But I was really concerned was about the level of harassment, sort of random vigilante people just showing up on people's doorsteps. Like, that would make all of us scared. And some of the rhetoric around it, frankly, is racist, and sort of the hate that we've seen generated around that, and that's an area of concern for me as well. And so I think we need to investigate things that are happening. We need to hold people accountable, but we need to also tamper down some of these harassing allegations and see if that's something that we need to look into as well.
Obviously, people are sharing things on social media, but has anybody sent you documented complaints of fraud?
Well, I'm not sure if anybody has, because we get a lot of intake, so my team hasn't briefed me on that. But we're seeing a lot of allegations. I mean, even what we saw in Minnesota was a lot of allegations, much of which has been debunked already in like the 48 hours. There are allegations here, and that's something that law enforcement and the regulatory agencies need to take very seriously. But what I don't trust is some random YouTuber showing up at somebody's house saying there's fraud here, because most often they don't have all the information. They haven't done their own fact-checking or fact-finding. But that's something that we need to take very seriously.
Okay, so me, Jonathan Cho, Cam Higbee, Carlene Johnson, Kristen Mag, we're all random YouTubers. We're all racists. We're all vigilantes for doing your job for you. You're the one who's supposed to be investigating things like this, and you aren't doing your job. He claims that the allegations in Minnesota were debunked. There are 90 people who have been charged in some of that fraud. The federal government has now frozen money going to a lot of these daycares. Department of Homeland Security is on the ground investigating them. No, they haven't been debunked. In fact, they've been fully proven in a lot of cases. And you claim they've been debunked? Something tells me thou doth protest too much.
Obviously, people are sharing things on social media, but has anybody sent you documented complaints of fraud?
Well, I'm not sure if anybody has, because we get a lot of intake. So
Hang on. You're the Attorney General of the state, and you have a massive, massive allegation of fraud. Wouldn't you say, hey, guys, if there's anything here, can we investigate it? Whether you believe it or not, you know why? You should want to say, we investigated it, it's debunked. Or we investigated it, and we got a problem here. Why is this not top of your list, given that you just had a governor announce he's not running for office because the scandal is so bad? The truth is, Nick Brown wants the fight. Nick Brown wants to fight with the Trump administration. You're talking about the guy who has sued the Trump administration more times already than Bob Ferguson did the entire time Trump was in office the first time. God bless Chris Daniels, because he kept digging for an answer.
So in terms of fraud right now, is there anything that you've seen or heard that you're concerned about?
No, but again, like I was off most of last week, the first time in over a year in this office being off. We've gotten a ton of intake, both people concerned about harassment at their homes and also allegations of fraud. That's going to take a while for the people to look through. So, but nothing.
Hang on. I know Mike wants me to play this whole clip. Hang on. I'm stopping right here for a second. I was off last week too. I was in a foreign country without access to half of these websites because I'm too dumb to know how to VPN works. And I was asking people to pull screenshots for me and pull data for me. And I had Jonathan Cho and Cam Higbee helping me out and going to houses and investigating this stuff. I was able to check it out, you lazy turd. How come you couldn't? You have a massive scandal brewing in Minnesota, Ohio, New York, and other places. It's starting to erupt here in Washington as well. You didn't have somebody in the office last week? Oh, maybe their kids, they couldn't get a spot in the Somalian daycare because they're not actually daycares that could watch the kids so they could go to work last week. It's insane to me. Absolutely insane to me that this is not going to be investigated. So you know what this comes down to? This comes down to all of you. At 4:30 today, Todd Myers from the Washington Policy Center is going to be joining us. And he's going to tell us how you can research this fraud and do the very same thing I was doing from a Microsoft Surface tablet in Israel. You can do the exact same thing and help blow this wide open, because you know what's going to happen next? Legislative cycle starts next week. Legislative session starts next week. And they're going to be pushing for that income tax. Pushing and pushing and pushing. And you're going to say, why should my money be going to Somalian fraudsters, or any fraudsters for that matter? And why isn't the Attorney General, whose job it is for protecting Washington taxpayer dollars, investigating it and instead going, yeah, let it go. Let it go. Absolutely crazy. Absolutely crazy. It comes down to us to expose it. You want to go viral? Here's your chance, my friends. I went viral 4 times last week, unexpectedly exposing this stuff. I'll help you. I don't care if it's me or you who goes viral. I just want the story out there. Make sure you're listening at 4:30 when Todd Myers joins us. Tell us exactly how you can investigate this fraud and be part of the solutions. Speaking of solutions, who's actually paying for these pro-Maduro protests? Because they don't seem very grassroots, and they don't seem very real, and they seem very manufactured. I want to know the solution of who's actually paying for all this. We'll give you the answers when we come back. You're listening to the Ari Hoffman Show on Talk Radio 570 KVI. these pro-Maduro protests that are happening in cities like New York, Seattle, they don't seem very grassroots. You know how I know this? I don't see any Venezuelans at these protests. From the video I've seen, it's a bunch of very diverse-looking white aging hippies and some young socialist white types. That's what I'm seeing at these protests. In fact, Mike, I don't think I've even told you this. I feel so vindicated this week. Now, I knew I was right because I'm never wrong, except for that one time I thought I was wrong. But remember when all the anti-Israel protests were going on? And I said, why are all the socialist activist groups doing this? And why do all their signs look the same? And who's bankrolling them? It's literally the exact same groups, except they've traded in their keffiyehs for the Venezuelan flag and pro-Maduro sign. So let me make sure I got this right. You guys, in June, were protesting no kings, and now you're in favor of the murdering, drug trafficking dictator? I just want to make sure I got that right. I just want to make sure I'm trying to follow the bouncing ball here, and I'm not really seeing the connection. Here in Seattle, we have these Looney Tune activists, once again, thank God for Jonathan Cho, who was down there actually checking in on the protests. You had members of the Freedom Road Socialist Organization. These were some of the people who were involved in what was going on at University of Washington and blocking freeways and doing all the other stuff they were doing around here. The person you're about to hear is a white, tall man in a dress. Yes, okay, so Maduro, known for his LGBTQ activism? This is the same as being in league with Hamas. Morons. That's who's leading this chant. Give a listen to these sheeple.
Hands up, Venezuela! Hands up, Venezuela! Hands up, Venezuela! Hands up, Venezuela! Free President Maduro! Free President Maduro! La lucha sigue! La lucha sigue! Libertad, socialismo o muerte! Venceremos!
I love how at the end they give up because they have no idea what the dude's saying, and we can't repeat all that. We don't know what he's saying. We don't habla the español. We live in the most ridiculous timeline. Anna Navarro from The View, not somebody in my little black book of the right-wing media conspiracy. She was weighing in on this. If you've lost Anna Navarro, how far have you strayed?
Your question, who voted for this? The people in South Florida, the Venezuelan community, the Cuban American community, the Nicaraguan American community voted for this. And for us, this is a very, very happy day when we see a dictator who has been part of oppressing and abusing the Venezuelan people for 25 years, when we see him in handcuffs and held to some sort of accountability. It brought me into tears. It brought me great joy. And, you know, I live in South Florida.
But are you okay with the way that it was done?
But you can, I think both things can be true.
Okay.
I think you can criticize and ask questions and have concerns about the way it was done and what this means in the future.
Right.
And I think you can still celebrate that this murderous, corrupt, sadistic son of a bitch is out of Venezuela.
Yeah.
Because I mean, he has... I think there's 8 million Venezuelan exiles all over the world. People have fled from this man's tyrannical rule. So for me...
Yeah, here's the thing. Mike, have we ever played a positive clip of Anna Navarro? Never. Not in the history of the show. We never agree with her. Her take just now was very, very fair. You may not like the way it was done, but Venezuela was freed from a horrible dictator. What were your alternatives? Should we send in the entire U.S. military, hundreds of thousands of troops, invade a country, then maybe we'll find the guy months later after we've destroyed the entire country? I think we did that a few times before, and it didn't work out so well. Let me give you this for a second. What if George W. Bush had gone after Saddam Hussein and just taken out Saddam Hussein? We don't know what would have happened, but we know what Iraq looks like now probably wouldn't be the case. What if they had just done that. Wouldn't have been any of this weapons of mass destruction, any of this other stuff. Wouldn't have been the Iraq war, any of that. Because I know the left hates the Iraq war. So, would you have said the same thing then? You want to ask, hey, was this the right way? Was it legal? Was it under international law? Well, anybody who says international law doesn't really exist. So, yeah, when the UN is criticizing what you did, you probably did the right thing, by the way. I hope when President Trump leaves office, he grabs that building by eminent domain and makes it a next Trump property or a parking lot or a homeless shelter or a drug treatment center. I hope he completely defunds that corrupt organization, because that's exactly what should happen. These are the guys who are emboldening dictators. So who's paying for all these protesters? The Washington Free Beacon has a fascinating write-up about Mackenzie Scott. You might know her as Mackenzie Bezos, formerly Mackenzie Bezos. She is sending millions of dollars to the Solitaire Network, which is funding not just the pro-Maduro groups, but the anti-Israel groups. She has been funding all this stuff, along with other billionaires. Wait, I thought billionaires were bad. Oh, no, as long as they're funding our leftist activists, they're fine. By the way, it's amazing to me. Today's the anniversary of January 6th. What is it, 5 years or something? The left is sitting Shiva on the Capitol steps, as always, right? Oh, so the left has one riot they don't like. Finally found the one riot that the left doesn't like. Lots more to discuss as the show continues, my friends. When we come back, the suspect who vandalized J.D. Vance's home, we know a little bit more about he, she, they, them. Now, we'll tell you all about it when we come back. You're listening to the Ari Hoffman Show on Talk Radio 570, KVI. Yesterday, there were all kinds of reports about something happening at J.D. Vance's private residence. This is his home, not the Naval Observatory in Washington, D.C. There were reports, was it a gunshot? Had somebody taken a shot at him? Had somebody fired at him? Well, now we know what actually happened. According to the Post-Millennial, William DeFore, a man was arrested for smashing several windows at Vice President J.D. Vance's home in Cincinnati, Ohio, is a trans-identified male who goes by the name Julia DeFore. This comes after DeFore was identified as a suspect in that incident as Monday. He identifies as transgender, and his father, who's a surgeon, is a Democrat donor. According to the Daily Mail, DeFore was previously arrested for other crimes related to vandalism in April, was sentenced to treatment at a mental health facility for 2 years, in addition to paying $5,500 in restitution. A Facebook profile picture shows a picture of DeFore, but with the name Julia. Additionally, an Instagram profile bearing the same name and likeness said Julia DeFore goes by she, her pronouns. So if you were institutionalized for all this, does this mean that trans is finally correctly being identified as a mental problem? Look, a normal person doesn't go around smashing the windows of the home of the Vice President of the United States or anybody's home for that matter. Somebody who's confused about what's attached to their anatomy should probably seek counseling. Instead, the left has elevated it to something that is something to aspire to. And dude, you ain't fooling anybody. You just ain't. You don't have very ladylike features. I don't know how to break that to you. We go to the Warrior Injury Law studio line, take a call from George in Kenmore. George, what's up, man?
Hey, I got a lawyer cousin down there in Portland. He's been there too long. He's from Nashville, or Memphis, I'm sorry. But, oh my God, he's just going off about January 6th. Said Trump could have stopped it. He started it. No, he didn't. He wasn't even there.
Yeah.
2 miles away.
Exactly.
And, and so I came up with a new term. I always just say TDS, TDS, TDS whenever these guys get going. There's only 2 or 3 of them. They're a bunch of old farts. And so I said, I came up with the term long TDS.
It's like COVID, right? Yeah, I like that. Long TDS. Last for years. If it lasts longer than a term of presidency, you might want to see a physician. Very good, George. Appreciate the call. Appreciate you being part of the show. You want to be part of the show, give us a call or text at 206-421-5757. That's 206-421-5757. You know what was making the rounds this morning on social media, Mike? That video that Nancy Pelosi's daughter did as a documentary on January 6th, where Nancy Pelosi's in the back of the SUV speeding away from the Capitol, saying it's all my fault, it's all my fault. He wanted the National Guard. I didn't bring the National Guard. And yet, it's all Trump's fault, right? All Trump's fault. If you go over the timeline of January 6th, you actually see the people started marching to the Capitol before he was even done speaking. There's a thing where you have what happened at the front of the building, what happened at the back of the building. You had a full-scale riot on one side of the building, and in the back, people, man, they're so violent. They're actually following the velvet ropes like they're on a tour of the Capitol. Nobody wants to have the nuanced discussion about January 6th, and the January 6th committee didn't want to investigate it as such. All they wanted to do was blame Trump, blame Trump, blame Trump. And they still want to do that. You know, guys, you don't get to say you are the just and the righteous when you were encouraging people burning down the country for the entire summer of 2020. And your chosen Messiah, Kamala Harris, was promoting a bail fund to get the rioters out of jail. We go back to the Warrior Injury Law studio line, take a call from our friend Transit Joe. Transit Joe, what's up, man?
What's up? There's a couple of things, Ari. First off, I want to break some news on this show that Tamar Ebazed, the anti-Semite that you've been calling out, he has a 1-week delay on the King County Council even deliberating on reappointing him. 2 listeners to this show, counting me, called in to provide testimony over the target, and we were able to suppress that for another week. So we need more KVI listeners to call in at 1:30 next Tuesday to the King County Council.
Awesome.
And,
That's great work. I wonder why they delayed it. Did they give a reason why, or they just say we need more time to consider this?
We need more time. Sarah Perry's pretty much a very good council chair. She's trying to mind everybody's concerns, but she hasn't dropped this nomination package yet. So I think public pressure is going to be key here. I think it's going to. Decisions are made by those who show up, and that's kind of the first half of my message.
Okay. Well, thank you, Joe. Do appreciate that. I will actually send out I'll send out the info to a few people and make sure they call in. Yeah. You got about a minute left, man. What's up?
Real briefly, listen, I don't approve of Black Lives Matter. I also don't approve of January 6th. And I think that the pardons were wrong. And I agree with Elaine Luria, a Navy veteran who tweeted today, living in a free democracy is not self-executing. It depends on leaders and citizens choosing to uphold our values. That's why we participate in democracy in between elections, dude.
Well, we get to overthrow the country every couple of years. They're called elections. Appreciate the call, Joe. Appreciate you being part of the show. You want to be part of the show, give us a call or text at 206-421-5757. That's 206-421-5757. When we come back, my friends, the Washington legislature is gearing up to start session next week. What taxes are coming your way? What bad policies are coming your way? We'll tell you how bad it's going to be when we come back. You're listening to the Ari Hoffman Show on Talk Radio 570 KVI. Welcome to the Ari Hoffman Show on Talk Radio 570 KVI, your home for the politically homeless, streaming live at KVI.com and the KVI app. If you want to be part of the most dangerous show on the airwaves, call or text the Warrior Injury Law Studio line at 206-421-5757. That's 206-421-5757. Coming up this hour, Zoran Mamdani is the biggest BS artist I have ever seen in my entire life. We're going to have some insane audio for you on that. But before we get to any of that, we go to the Warrior Injury Law Studio line, take a call from Terry in Parkland. Terry, what's going on?
Hey, Ari. I just wanted to talk about some of the former leaders like Kathleen Sebelius and Lois Lerner. I know they try to bring James Comey to justice. Are these guys ever going to see justice? I mean, if Trump went out, if the Justice Department went after him, it wouldn't be like going after rivals since it's kind of old. But
well, I think here's the problem: is that these cases take forever, absolutely forever. And by then you have multiple administrations, and technically the administration has nothing to do with the justice system, and the justice system does its own thing. But priorities of the Justice Department can change in the meantime. So it becomes, how much do you actually want to pursue something? I mean, just look what happened at the end of the Biden administration where they said, dude's going to be president. Is it even worth going after these charges against President Trump, given that they were trumped up already? So do I think anybody's ever going to see justice? No, unfortunately not. We have multiple justice systems in this country, one for the specials and one for everybody else. And as much as I love President Trump, I don't think a lot of these people are actually going to see justice.
Yeah, and James Comey, I think they went on him a little bit too soon.
Okay, how much longer would you have liked them to wait? What would you have liked them to wait for?
Well, no, I'd like to have seen a little bit stronger evidence. I think it was a little bit not quite there. Maybe a month or so to get a more solid case. I think it was a little bit on the weak side.
I got you. I would actually say a lot of these cases actually I think are not the best cases. I think they should be punished. I think they should see justice, but I think a lot of them are a little thin. I think there's a great episode of The West Wing where they're talking about assassinating a foreign leader. And when you have President Bartlett say, this guy isn't just a regular criminal, he's Capone. When you're going after somebody that everybody knows their name, you have to have them dead to rights. Because don't forget, OJ got off, which means any of these people could get off. I'm not saying they don't deserve to be prosecuted. I'm not saying they don't deserve to see justice. I mean, James Comey literally rewrote how the Justice Department prosecutes crime to save Hillary Clinton. But am I encouraged? Do I think they're actually going to see the inside of a jail cell or anything else? No, not really.
Yeah, no, I agree with you, but I was like, boy, if it was on the Trump side, they'd all be in jail.
Yeah, I mean, look, if President Trump had not won the election, odds are he'd be sitting in jail right now because they would have forced him into jail on trumped-up charges. Terry, appreciate the call. Appreciate you being part of the show. You want to be part of the show, give us a call or text at 206-421-5757. That's 206-421-5757. The legislative cycle is starting next week. That means the Washington legislature is back in business, back in session. And I am very, 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 very concerned. Basically, right now, Washington State is on life support. And you can save it. It can be saved. Or you can just put 3 bullets in its chest and finish the job. And it seems like the Democrats are determined to do that. I think you're going to see a few themes coming up in the legislative cycle. One for sure is taxes. How much money can they yank out of you? I wouldn't be surprised if they started putting tolls on I-5 going into other states, saying, oh, you're leaving the state, give us 50% of whatever you made. I wouldn't be surprised by that at all. I mean, really, they are so desperate to take your money. They haven't realized that they have chased away businesses. So much so that I got multiple press releases this week, Mike. I think 3 in the last 48 hours, talking about how Washington is the least business-friendly state in the U.S. And I've signed a break to all the lefty lunatics. You guys do know that businesses pay for you to have a job, assuming you have one. You do know that those businesses pay taxes, maybe not enough as you want them to pay, but it funds all your crazy wish list items. How much more money do you pay your fair share? You know what I've never got an answer on? What is that? What's the fair share? I've come to the conclusion it's everything. Every single dollar. So what's Bob Ferguson pushing now? Bob Ferguson, the Democrats are pushing their millionaire tax. Now, we have to clarify a few things here on the show. An income tax is not technically illegal in Washington state. It has to be applied evenly. Why is Bob Ferguson pushing an income tax? Because he thinks he can get away with it by calling it a millionaire tax. And what happens is when they don't get enough money, because nothing will ever satisfy them, they will expand the tax to cover everybody else because it's already in place. Now, a normal Constitution-following Washington State Supreme Court should look at this and go, you're not applying it evenly. If you're specifically targeting the millionaires, you can't pass this thing. But they're going to back it up because they're all a bunch of leftist Looney Tunes, just like the way they revoked the $30 car tab, your vote. They're going to push forward with this thing. And then there's going to be a millionaire tax. Shall we do the Ari predicts the future of what's going to happen? Any millionaire who can leave the state will leave the state, just like Jeff Bezos did. They'll take their money somewhere else because they didn't become a millionaire by being stupid. And it's dumb to stay somewhere where people want to take your money and where the business climate is hostile and where you might have a bunch of lunatic coffee pourers show up at your front doorstep because they don't like what you're doing and set up an encampment. So they'll leave. What did we see happen with the payroll tax, the jumpstart tax in Seattle? Seattle City Council said if we tax Amazon and these other high earners, we'll make all this money. It turns out they didn't make as much money as they wanted. Why? Because Amazon picked up and moved to Bellevue. You know, I've got relatives who work for Amazon on the East Coast. You don't have to be here to work for Amazon anymore. Amazon's got places all over the U.S. So does Boeing. So do many corporations. I am shocked that Starbucks is still here. I don't know why Starbucks corporate is still here. There's no reason to stay in the area. I wouldn't be surprised if they are the first big company we hear about moving their corporate offices in this cycle. Because don't forget, a whole bunch of these companies sent a letter to the Washington legislature last session saying, if you go forward with these taxes, we will move, including the Seattle Mariners, by the way. So they have a lot of high earners on those sports teams. Yeah, I'm sure the NBA will go, yeah, let's put a basketball team there where they're going to get taxed up the wazoo. The ownership group will go, why would we be here when we can make money somewhere else, say Oklahoma City? So I assume the Democrats are going to go full throttle on this, and the messaging is going to be, it's the millionaires, it's the millionaires, it's the millionaires. Now, how do you counter this messaging? I have a plan, but it's going to take help from all of you. And here's what my plan is. Some of you are saying, Ari, just run an initiative. Well, Let's Go Washington did that, and then the opposition put in millions of dollars, tens of millions of dollars, and defeated it. That's not going to work. You know what you have to do this time? The fraud in Minnesota is huge right now on social media. You have to expose all the fraud in Washington state. And you have to say, why should anybody give you our taxpayer dollars when you are not being good stewards of that money? Coming up at 4:30 today, Todd Myers from the Washington Policy Center will be joining the show to tell us exactly how you can research the fraud or alleged fraud yourself. And I'm not saying every Somali daycare is fraudulent. I'm not saying every Democrat plan is fraudulent, but there's a lot of fraud out there. When you've got tens of billions of dollars in your budget and you're short billions of dollars more and you don't know why and you can't do math, something's not right. We need a tax revolt. And I'm not saying stop paying your taxes, as much fun as that would be. I think a lot of you will go to jail. I'm not encouraging that. But what you need to do is you need to expose the fraud, waste, and abuse. And you need to be loud about it. Or you need to give it to me so I can be loud about it. So that way we can change the narrative. Nick Shirley is a 23-year-old kid with a cell phone and a microphone accessory. The governor of Minnesota, who was the vice presidential candidate for the Democrats of the United States. He just dropped out of running for re-election because of a kid with a cell phone and a microphone. You could do the exact same thing here. Earlier in the show, when we talked about Nick Brown dismissing the fraud, we have to put so much stuff out there that they can't dismiss it anymore, that they have to cover it. Because what happened to Nick Shirley when he first exposed all this? CNN went after him. PBS went after him. NBC. Every single mainstream media outlet went after him. They're not going after him anymore. You know why? Because now they're covering that the governor of Minnesota isn't running for re-election. Now they're covering why didn't he investigate the fraud. You know what the conversation was today? He had a press conference. Yesterday, he had a press conference announcing he wasn't seeking re-election, ran out of that room before taking any questions. Today, he takes questions. And what's the first question? Well, if you're up to your eyeballs in fraud, why aren't you stepping down? If you didn't investigate the fraud or didn't stop the fraud or aren't saying you're responsible for not seeing the fraud, not detecting the fraud, not investigating the fraud, why are you still in office? Why aren't you resigning? He doesn't have an answer. That's what the mainstream media is reporting today, which means they're reporting the fraud. That's what we need, more of that. It's not enough to just go viral on social media. These stories need to be so frequent that the media can't ignore them. They'll try, but once you show how Democrats didn't want to investigate any of them, then you got them. Now, what I think the other thing is going to be, aside from taxes, is concealment, is hiding what they are up to. Democrats hate that Washington State has excellent public disclosure laws. Mike, I don't give Washington compliments a lot, but they are really great with public disclosure. When you file a public disclosure, it may take a while, but you'll eventually get what you asked for. Now, you have Lisa Wellman, who's a senator in Washington, who is proposing a new piece of legislation to try and conceal more of the information on daycares from public websites. Why do you think she's doing that? Funny how right after the Minnesota stuff was revealed, all of a sudden she comes out with legislation to try and conceal the stuff from public website. That is what she... Oh, by the way, this is also the one who wanted to lower the sentences for sex offenders. She's got a whole track record of extreme crazy. That was her response. So Democrats are going to try and hide as much as they can from you. That's what they're going to do. Luckily for us, we have people like Travis Couture. Representative Travis Couture has proposed legislation calling for third-party audits for groups receiving government grants and also a political donation disclosure. By the way, that's what we ask all political candidates to do. Political candidates have to turn over all their financial records so that way you know what they're into. Yeah, you can look all that stuff up on the Public Disclosure Commission. So why is it so hard to ask for any of this? I'll tell you a story. When I ran the youth group here in Washington, and we had about 1,000 kids in the youth group. We're part of a big national organization, and we had our own books, and we had a local resident who was nice enough to volunteer and do our bookkeeping for us. Well, one day, National comes out, and they say, we got to audit your books. And I go, we have no money, but be my guest. Audit away. Audit to your heart's content. And they said, well, you need to pay this person to come out and audit your books. I'm like, fine, we'll pay the person to audit the books. So we had to do this because we wanted to keep getting money from the national nonprofit. This is standard. This is standard. You got to be asking yourselves why the Democrats would resist any of this. Why they're trying to conceal stuff. Because they're up to their dirty tricks. I saw something today that made me laugh. I saw that Ilhan Omar did a whole post thanking Tim Walz. Thanking him? Well, I guess when you go from having a net worth of nothing to $30 million, you're going to be pretty thankful of the guy who may have had something to do with it. Oh, by the way, you should have heard this press conference today. Tim Walz is in full spin mode trying to save his legacy. Listen to this.
Did you make the decision to end your campaign by yourself, or did you receive pressure from Democratic allies?
This is a decision that I make and make with my family. And certainly, I think, as I said, it's the right decision. I'll note, I think it's appropriate we're here today. The war that's being waged against Minnesota, you're seeing it. We have a ridiculous surge of apparently 2,000 people not coordinating with us that are for a show of the cameras. I'm going to note to all of you, today is January 6th. There's no debate what happened. The President of the United
Oh, my God. So wait a second. Department of Homeland Security sends in the feds to investigate Minnesota because it's so rampant with fraud, and you're comparing it to January 6th. Wow, you guys are just a broken record. You got nothing else. Nothing else at all. So you going to resign, dude?
We know that those programs are out there. I don't think that got reported, but there was an analysis done on the states across the country, unemployment insurance. I think Iowa and Minnesota were 1 and 2 and the most secure. So there's a lot of safeguards in place, and we'll continue to deliver that. And I said, I told you yesterday, and I'll continue to say it, I will be there to make sure. Tim O'Malley and our team over there on program integrity, BCA, we have more tools that will continue to do this. The buck stops with me on this.
So hang on. So the buck stops with you, but you let all the fraud happen on your watch, and now you're saying, oh, we're so secure, fraud can't happen on my watch, and we're going to stop it from happening. Talk about the wolf guarding the henhouse. All this stuff, by the way, I don't think Tim Walz is in on it. I really, really don't. I think he's so dumb that they were able to take advantage of him. And I think he's so woke that when they detected it in the Somalian community, he said, no, it's fine, they're black. It's fine, they're immigrants. I don't think Tim Walz is smart enough to be in on any of the fraud. I was looking at his financial records. He didn't get rich like Ilhan Omar. I think he's another Inslee type, just a dum-dum who is such an open-minded, bleeding heart liberal that you're able to defraud his entire government and take this much advantage of him. What do you think? Do you think he was in on it? Do you think he's stupid and that's why it happened? Or do you think he was in on it because he's so open-minded? Give us a call or a text at 206-421-5757. That's 206-421-5757. When we come back, my friends, speaking of insane liberals, communist Zoran Mamdani is the biggest BS artist I have ever seen in my life. And we have insane audio to show you just how bad it is. You're listening to the Ari Hoffman Show on Talk Radio 570, KVI. Welcome back to the Ari Hoffman Show. Just a reminder, download the KVI app and, of course, subscribe to us on whatever your preferred podcast platform is. That way you never miss a minute of the show. Remember to rate and share while you're there so that way others, including your friends, can be part of it as well. Zoran Mamdani is so full of it, it is coming out of his communist eyeballs. How do I know this? He says he is going to solve every problem no matter what it is. He is going to give you whatever you want. He's like Jim Carrey and Bruce Almighty with the Yahweh computer, right? Just saying reply yes to all. If you remember that scene, yeah, he can't deliver on anything he promises. Not at all. So the other day, the World Cup came up and how expensive ticket prices are going to be to World Cup matches. This is what Zoran Mamdani said.
What we are seeing, I had a New Yorker the other day come up to me and ask me if there was any way I could help him get World Cup tickets because he was saying that the cost that he saw for a game was $600, right? This is increasingly out of reach. We have made what used to be a working class game into a luxury experience. And there are too many for whom it doesn't matter where the World Cup is being played in the world. They know where they're going to watch it. It's TV. And we want to ensure that there are more experiences available to each and every New Yorker.
Oh, are you going to use taxpayer money to pay for the tickets? Wait a second. Mike, check me on this because I don't do the soccer. Last time I checked, the games were in New Jersey, not in New York. Yeah, they're at the Meadowlands, if I'm not mistaken, which is out in New Jersey. None of these games are actually being held in New York. You have nothing to do with the World Cup. Do you know how I know this? Because the football stadium for the New York Jets and the New York Giants is in New Jersey. That's right, the Jets and Giants both play in New Jersey. The only football team that actually plays in New York is the Buffalo Bills. So I think, Mike, I didn't even check the World Cup schedule. I bet you I'm right. Is that what's actually happening? They're playing in MetLife Stadium. That's the Meadowlands. That's the Meadowlands. I'm still mad that the Mets didn't get MetLife Stadium. I think that would have been great, right? Instead, we get Citi Field named after a bank. I'll take the insurance company just because they got Snoopy and they got the Mets in the name. That's what I want. So, Zoran, what is you think FIFA is going to listen to Zoran? Zoran comes in. I'd really like you to take less money for your tickets. FIFA goes, how about no? Right?
How about no?
No. Exactly. No. You know this whole thing you're putting on to make money? I really want you to make less money. How about we have a whole section for homeless people right there in the bleachers? We'll give them beer too, right? What do you guys say to that?
No.
No. We're not going to do that. Okay. All right. Here's the other Zoran Mamdani stupidity. This is great. Zoran Mamdani posted after the raid on Maduro in Venezuela. I was briefed. You were briefed. I see. Do you have your AI on your cell phone read you the news? Is that the briefing? You had it read an X for you? Or did some 20-year-old green-haired socialist intern go, you got to check your phone right now. They went after our guy. They went after the communist dictator in Venezuela. Yeah, you were briefed. I'm sorry, do you have security clearance, Zoran? Is that something? How were you briefed exactly? What, you asked, okay, hang on, let's give benefit of the doubt. Did you ask the head of the National Guard of New York, which you don't have the authority to do, to come into your office and explain to you the military mission that was carried out? Did you call the Pentagon? And did you say, would you mind giving me the information on this operation that you just had? You were briefed. Do you think any of that actually happened?
No.
Okay, Baby Yoda knows the answer, and he's only a baby. So, what do you think actually? No. That's what Zoran said. Yes, Zoran asked for a briefing, and they go, dude, we're a bunch of socialists who never had a real job, and none of us ever served in the military. We can't give you a briefing, so no. And then Zoran Mamdani says,
what do you mean no?
Yeah, exactly. So he was mocked relentlessly. I was briefed. All right, hang on. Every morning I come in and Mike briefs me on the news of the day. How does Mike brief me on the news of the day? I found this story, and I found this story, and I think you might like that. Oh, and by the way, you got to go record some commercials in the other room. That is how Mike briefs me every day. How do you think Zoran Mamdani was briefed? So the media in New York, they're not like our media here. Yeah, they have the mainstream media, but they love the gotcha. Plus, they have the New York Post, right? We don't have that. So they pressured him on this briefed nonsense, and here's what he said.
Clearance yet, and has anyone from a federal agency reached out to you or members of your team to begin the vetting to get federal security clearance?
That briefing, yes, was conducted by my team, and the question of federal security clearance is one that's ongoing.
So, do you have it right now?
No, not as yet.
So hang on. You don't have security clearance. The briefing was done by your team. That's a bunch of socialist, communist crazies. I'm sure that was a very, very extensive briefing. Right here, Robin Lakewood says over on the Warrior Injury Law text line, briefed. Maduro called him, help, help. Oh, very, very good. Bob in Portland says, Mamdani can institute price controls on tickets and watch FIFA never bring a World Cup to New York ever, ever again. Yes, exactly right. Oh, unbelievable. It's so not, though. He is so completely full of it. So, Zoran Mamdani also has this person who is his tenant director, C.O. Weaver, who wants to transition away from private property. Give a listen to this lunatic who's working for him.
I think the reality is that for centuries we've really treated property as an individualized good and not a collective good, and we are going to transitioning to treating it as a collective good and towards a model of shared equity will require that we think about it differently, and it will mean that families, especially white families, but some POC families who are homeowners as well, are going to have a different relationship to property than the one that we currently have.
A different relationship to property. Oh, guys, anybody who owns a house out there, guys and gals, anybody who owns a house, you're a white supremacist. You're all a bunch of white supremacists. That's what the lady just said. I find this funny because the New York Post did some digging once this video of Zoran Mamdani's aide went viral. Headline, mom of Zoran Mamdani aide who said owning homes fuels white supremacy has a $1.6 million house in Tennessee. Okay, can we clarify things for a minute here? Tennessee isn't Seattle proper. Homes are cheaper in Tennessee. If you have a $1.6 million house in Tennessee, you're doing just fine. I guess her mom's a white supremacist then. We go to the Warrior Injury Law studio line, take a call from Steve in Kent. Steve, what's up, man?
Oh, people just misunderstood what Mamdani was saying. What he meant to say was that he soiled his briefs.
You mean when he realized how over his head he is? Yeah, I think that's about right. Very good, Steve. Very, very good. Appreciate the call. Appreciate you being part of the show. You want to be part of the show, you give us a call or text at 206-421-5757. That's 206-421-5757. Even in Bonnie Lake says, Tim Walsh might be smarter than you think. If he hasn't taken his cut yet, there's nothing to be traced back to him. Once he is out of office, he'll probably quietly make his rounds and collect his cut from all the people he let commit fraud. Interesting. You know what I think somebody should do? Pull up Jay Inslee's tax filings for next year. You can pull up a private citizen's tax filings. Pull up Jay Inslee's tax filings for next year and see who he's getting money from and also see what big real estate purchases he's made in Idaho or hasn't made in Idaho for that matter. Yes, you can actually check that stuff out online. When we come back, my friends, you want to be part of exposing this fraud we think is happening here in Washington State? Todd Myers from the Washington Policy Center will be joining us. Tell us how you can be part of Doge Washington and the Army revealing all this fraud. You're listening to the Ari Hoffman Show on Talk Radio 570 KVI. Since we started exposing the Minnesota-style fraud here in Washington State, a lot of you have actually been reaching out with tips. Now, I keep having to give these little seminars about what to look for, how to look for it, but actually our friend Todd Myers, Vice President of Research for the Washington Policy Center, beat me to it and actually did a whole thread over on X on how to check for fraud. And Todd's a math guy. I'm not a math guy. The thing I know is how many minutes I got left in a segment. That's the extent of my math. But Todd analyzes this stuff using mathematics and does a really good job and knows all the best places to check. Joining us now on the Warrior Injury Law Studio line is our friend from the Washington Policy Center, Todd Myers. Thanks for being here, buddy.
Happy New Year.
Always a pleasure to have you. Happy New Year to you as well. So give us the highlights of this thread you did.
Well, people want to help, right? They want to find fraud. And frankly, in Washington State, we need all the help we can get because there's a lot of media outlets who don't do the traditional function of, highlighting fraud and doing these sorts of things. And for better or for worse, Washington State has some of the best transparency laws in the country. So we have access to a lot of data. So I wanted to tell people, here's the way to do it, because what I see too often are people who want to help but are reckless or get mad and do it the wrong way when the real data is out there. So, on my thread, the first thing I said is, take your time and be patient. People want to break stories quickly, but there are the tools to do it right. And the problem with doing it wrong is that you can discredit the effort to find fraud. But there's a couple of great ways to do it. One is that Washington State, the checkbook is online. Literally every payment Washington State makes is online, and you can see, and then you can sort it by who the recipient is. And so if you suspect that there are organizations who are getting a lot of money, you can look and see how much have they been paid in 2025 or whenever. So it's really a great resource. And the second thing is, you can do a public disclosure request. You can ask for documents. Now, you can't ask government to make documents, but you can ask for documents that exist. And by law, they basically have to turn over everything. There's even an instance where a reporter was handed a public disclosure request, and a reporter standing there said, "What did you just hand that person?" and said, "I can't tell you." And they wrote out on a piece of paper, "I'm requesting whatever you just handed that person," and they had to honor it. So we have great laws, and you can do that. Now, sometimes it takes time. It can take months to get it back. But be patient, do the work, because if you really find fraud, if you really find something, if it takes 3 months to figure out, it's still a big issue. So don't rush it. Do it the right way, and it can have a big impact. I've seen it.
Now, Todd, I don't know if you know this story, but I filed a public disclosure request in the middle of COVID when Andrew Cuomo was sending health inspectors to Jewish-only schools to find out if he was sending them to any other private schools. I got back that FOIA request 4 years later. And at the time, it really screwed Andrew Cuomo. So just FYI, people, you have to play the long game. Now, here in Washington, it doesn't take that long. But if they are giving you issues, there are ways to speed up the process. And one that ties in perfectly to this, when we talk about Uba Gardir, the woman who is running for King County Council, who was the bus bombing lady, the one who allegedly threatened to blow up a school bus. When I found out about that and I asked for the video of it, they said, "Sorry, can't give it to you until this date." And it was the date after the election. I said, "Great, who do I speak to about election fraud?" And wouldn't you know, I had it the next day. Here in Washington State, some of my best stories come from public disclosures. The problem is sometimes they come months later, and I forgot what I even filed it for. So for the people who are using the Washington State checkbook, that's the same thing we used for Doge Washington for ages. But just because somebody's getting government money doesn't mean they're doing something nefarious, right?
Right, and that's the thing is that sometimes you have to put pieces together. So I'll give you an example of something that I did a disclosure request to the Department of Transportation. There is a $126 million program to help, truckers buy electric vehicles, and so it's another part of this CO2 money that's being spent, and it's a hugely wasteful program. But I wanted to know who was running it because there was a group in California. And so I did a disclosure request. And when you do them, try to make them as simple as possible. If you say, "Give me every email for these 3 months from all of these people," it's going to take a long time. Ask specifically for what you want. So I asked for the contracts. And what I found out is that left-wing special interest groups were getting a cut of the money. a group called Climate Solutions was getting $360,000 funneled to them through a California organization, right? So they're not going to actually even show up on the state checkbook. So you have to be rigorous. But if you can take information from the checkbook, from disclosure requests, you can put the pieces together and you can tell a more full story, and then you can know I've really got something. But the key again is everybody wants to do it in one day. Everybody wants to do it in a week. And I understand that everybody else has other jobs, but be patient, because if you really find something dramatic, it can wait and it will have impact.
One of my mentors in this industry actually said to me, Ari, it's better to be right than be first. And that is something I had to learn the hard way when I first started getting into the news business, because some details were not correct, because I rushed out a story and it burned me and it burned the effort, just like what you're talking about. Now, for the people who are doing the stuff for Doge and people who are doing the stuff who are looking into this fraud. So here's an example of how you do it. And this is what some of our listeners have been doing. They go to the Washington State checkbook, just like Todd Meyer said, because someplace near them that seems a little fishy. There's no kids coming or going, but then they find out they're getting hundreds of thousands of dollars or millions of dollars from the state. Just because you don't see anybody coming and going doesn't mean necessarily there's anything wrong. I was making phone calls from Israel to lots of these facilities, and you hear kids playing in the background, and they sent me application forms, and they said, come on down and make an appointment. So just because they're getting state money and you don't see people coming and going doesn't mean something's going on. Somebody still needs to go and check that out. And that doesn't necessarily mean you should be the one to do it. You can check it with me. You can check it with Jonathan Cho. There's a lot of us doing this because sometimes you just haven't noticed what's going on. How often do you notice what's going on at your neighbor's house? Now, Todd, you've actually been looking into our government neighbors and seeing that they claim all this money they're spending, or excuse me, that all this money they're spending is actually bringing down carbon emissions. But you have some issues with what they're reporting on that, right?
Well, this is a perfect example of what we're just talking about. So the day before Thanksgiving, the state released a report showing how it had spent $1.5 billion worth of money from the CO2 tax to reduce on projects, state projects that reduce CO2 emissions, among other things. And they said, the headline was, we have reduced so much CO2 emissions, almost 9 million metric tons, which is equivalent to 40% of the gas and diesel vehicles in Washington state for an entire year. And the cost to reduce that is only $40 a metric ton. Now, that doesn't mean something to most people, but it means something to me. That is an extremely low price. And the minute I saw that, because I work in this area, I knew something was wrong. So what did I do? I sent an email to the Department of Ecology. I said, can you send me the spreadsheet with this? And they said, yes, here you go. So I sat down with the spreadsheet and went through it. And what I found is that there are, out of 3,600 projects, I found 8 projects that are so badly skewed that they account for 86% of the total reductions, and they're fake. They're totally wrong. So what I then did is that I emailed one of the recipients of one of those grants and said, hey, I'm looking at this number. Did you generate this number? And they said, no, we don't know where that number came from. That came from the state. We don't we're just going to monitor. We're going to see how it does. But yeah, that's not our number. And I said, because it doesn't seem right. So I'm trying to find out how it happened. They said, okay. 2 days later, they emailed me back and said, yeah, I asked the Department of Commerce about this, and here's the email I got. And the Department of Commerce said, yes, that number is wrong, and the Department of Ecology knows it. Now, to our previous discussion, I had to take the time, and I double-checked, and I talked to the recipients to make sure to see what they said so that there wasn't something I was missing. And once I had their confirmation that, no, I wasn't missing anything, they also cooperated with me to give me an email from the Department of Commerce saying that they acknowledged it was wrong. But it just shows, the Department of Ecology, who constantly tells us that they are the experts and they know what they're doing and they can, help us reduce CO2 emissions effectively. Their report that they put out, that they touted, is 86% fake. It is incredible how much money we are wasting on climate projects and climate policy that does absolutely nothing. And you wouldn't ever know it unless, somebody looked at it.
Right, and yet they say, oh, it's going to deal with flood mitigation from floods caused by climate change, and then they're claiming the most recent floods were caused by climate change, and they didn't do anything regarding that. They claim we're going to modernize our fleet of ferries, so that way they're more ecologically friendly, and yet now we have ferries that are breaking down and throwing props and are going to be out of service forever, and yet it just seems like they're using this money for whatever they want to use this money for, whether to enrich their buddies or something else, but it's not actually doing what they said it would be doing. Todd Myers, Vice President of Research for the Washington Policy Center, thank you so much for joining us today, buddy. Really appreciate the tips.
Always nice to chat with you. Happy New Year.
You too. Always a pleasure. We got a whole lot more to discuss. As the show continues, you're listening to the Ari Hoffman Show on Talk Radio 570 KVI. Welcome back to the Ari Hoffman Show. Just a reminder, download the KVI app and, of course, subscribe on whatever your preferred podcast platform is. That way you never miss a minute of the show. Don't forget, while you're over there, rate and share so that way your friends can get in on the fun as well. You know who's not having fun? Anybody who relies on the ferries for transportation. According to Como News, Washington State Ferries is operating with a reduced fleet on Tuesday as 3 of its aging vessels are undergoing urgent repairs. Now, can we blame Turd Ferguson for all of this? No. I want to. I really do, but we can't. You can blame the Democrats. It's been 40 years of Democrat rule, and they've never done anything to address our aging fleet. In fact, they only made it worse. Let's take Jay Inslee for a minute. Jay Inslee wanted his hybrid vessels. Now, I don't know a lot about engineering. And And I don't know a lot about mechanics, but what I do know is that the old ferries were diesel electric engines. They used a little bit of gas, but they also ran electric power. So the newer ones, cleaner, better. Instead, rather than dealing with it, they left the older ones in service, which are probably pumping a whole bunch more garbage into the atmosphere. But then Jay Inslee says, we're going to build new ferries, and they're going to be electric, and we're going to build them right here in Washington. Sir, no shipyards can build those ferries. Okay, then. We're going to take the ferries we have with the rotting hulls, take out those evil diesel engines, and put in new electric engines. Governor, that's going to cost 3 times as much. Silence, peasant! We will do what I want to do. I don't care about the costs. We'll just put a tax on something. Gasoline, perhaps. Yeah. And then what happened? We know that ferry hasn't been reliable, the one that went into service. And this idea of building more electric ferries, Bob Ferguson didn't just not build them in Washington. He went to a contractor in Florida to build regular ferries because the problem is so bad. Therefore, admitting you can't build them here, even though Washington is known for its shipbuilding, or at least used to be known for its shipbuilding, sent the business out of state, sent the business to Florida. Man, so many things are going to Florida from Washington. Now you've got 3 of these ships. Washington State Ferries said an oil tube issue was discovered on Saturday, which caused high temperatures in the shaft bearing. The ferry is expected to return to service the week of January 12th. That's the Tacoma. Crews are working to restore 2 boats service using the Kitsap on Tuesday afternoon. You know what I don't understand? Mike, I don't know how much we've discussed this. I taught water skiing for 7 summers. This was a job I had. The camp I worked at had 7 motorboats. Yes, this was a very privileged camp, shall we say. Okay, so they had 7 motorboats. Yeah, I wish. Okay, so you had 7 motorboats. 3 of them were for water sports activities, water skiing, wakeboarding, kneeboarding. Private lessons. Well, not private. You had like 3 or 4 kids in the boat at a time. The other boats, 2 of them were for boat rides and banana boating, and the last one, you're going to love this, Mike, was for parent boat rides who came to visit camp. So you could take the whole family on a tour of the Long Island Sound. Now, some of you at home are doing math, and you're going, Ari, you just listed 6 boats. What is the 7th for? A spare. In case anything went wrong, you always had a spare ready to go. Washington doesn't work that way. Washington doesn't have spares of anything. In Washington, we're flying by the skin of our teeth. We don't have a rainy day fund in case of disasters. We have to beg the federal government for help. We don't have spare ferries just sitting around. We have let this situation fester and get worse that now we're in the situation we are now. How many years is it going to take till we get those ferries? Is Bob Ferguson still even going to be in office when we get those ferries we ordered from Florida? I mean, Mike, I think I saw something like that where maybe they show up in his last year in office, or maybe after, well, who knows if he runs for election or runs for higher office then. But these things aren't getting here anytime soon, and Jay Inslee did us no favors. In fact, him and Bob Ferguson made this issue worse because what they do, they fired a whole bunch of Department of Transportation workers because they refused to get COVID jabs. Even though they were sitting in those toll booths, ticket booths, by themselves. Even though they were sitting in those pilot houses by themselves, they decide to get rid of them. Now, here's something else. I saw this report where we just had all this massive flooding. Well, did we end the drought after the massive flooding? No, because we don't have enough infrastructure to actually contain the water. So they're still saying there's a drought. We don't really have a drought. It just means we had less water than last year. But once again, the water was pouring out into the ocean, just like in California. Even when you have a disaster with water, they couldn't even store the water, do anything with the water, make a positive out of it, turn lemons into lemonade. That's Washington State never planning ahead. Is anybody shocked by any of this? No, of course not. By the way, the people who have to recover from this are in for a rude awakening because our insurance policies are absolutely terrible thanks to our insurance commissioner. Again, another job you didn't even know existed. You haven't even been paying attention to, but that's why your insurance rates are so expensive because our policies here in Washington are so terrible. They're among the worst in the U.S. When we come back, my friends, so much more to discuss, including the daring raid on Maduro's palace in Caracas. We'll give you the details on that, plus the lefty response to it, which is just cracking me up. We'll talk all about that when we come back. You're listening to the Ari Hoffman Show on Talk Radio 570 KBI. Welcome to the Ari Hoffman Show on Talk Radio 570 KVI, your home for the politically homeless, streaming live at KVI.com and the KVI app. If you want to be part of the most dangerous show on the airwaves, call or text the Warrior Injury Law Studio line at 206-421-5757. That's 206-421-5757. Coming up this hour, Mike Solon weighs in on this controversy that all the lefties in Seattle government want to decriminalize drugs. But before we get to any of that, I saw something really, really fascinating about the raid to get Maduro, the way it was actually carried out. People have been so busy protesting this way or the other, and this has really been left out of the conversation. How did they do it? It's funny because the easiest way to find out was during the press conference when they announced it. A lot of people missed it. Here's General Raisin Cain. I love this dude, by the way, just his name alone. Raisin Cain was giving a complete briefing of how they carried this out. It's a little longer, but it's worth listening to because Americans love seeing how their military works, and this is awesome. Give a listen.
Not quit. At 10:46 p.m. Eastern Time last night, the president ordered the United States military to move forward with this mission. He said to us, and we appreciate it, Mr. President, good luck and Godspeed. And those words were transmitted to the entire joint force. Over the course of the night, aircraft began launching from 20 different bases on land and sea across the Western Hemisphere. In total, more than 150 aircraft, bombers, fighters, intelligence, reconnaissance, surveillance, rotary wing were in the air last night. Thousands and thousands of hours of experience were airborne. Our youngest crew member was 20. And our oldest crew member was 49, and there's simply no match for American military might. As the night began, the helicopters took off with the extraction force, which included law enforcement officers, and began their flight into Venezuela at 100 feet above the water. As they approached Venezuelan shores, the United States began layering different effects provided by Spacecom, Cybercom, and other members of the interagency to create a pathway. Overhead, those forces were protected by aircraft from the United States Marines, the United States Navy, the United States Air Force, and the Air National Guard. The force included F-22s, F-35s, F-18s, EA-18s, E-2s, B-1 bombers, and other support aircraft, as well as numerous remotely piloted drones. As the force began to approach Caracas, the Joint Air Component began dismantling and disabling the air defense systems in Venezuela, employing weapons to ensure the safe passage of the helicopters into the target area. The goal of our air component is, was, and always will be to protect the helicopters and the ground force and get them to the target and get them home. As the force crossed the last point of high terrain where they'd been hiding in the clutter, we assessed that we had maintained totally the element of surprise. As the helicopter force ingressed towards the objective at low level, we arrived at Maduro's compound at 1:01 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, or 2:01 a.m. Caracas local time, and the apprehension force descended into Maduro's compound and moved with speed, precision, and discipline towards their objective and isolated the area to ensure the safety and security of the ground force while apprehending the indicted persons. On arrival into the target area, the helicopters came under fire, and they replied with that fire with overwhelming force in self-defense. One of our aircraft was hit but remained flyable, and as the president said earlier today, all of our aircraft came home, and that aircraft remained flyable during the rest of the mission. As the operation unfolded at the compound, our air and ground intelligence teams provided real-time updates to the ground force, ensuring those forces could safely navigate the complex environment without unnecessary risk. The force remained protected by overhead tactical aviation. Maduro and his wife, both indicted, gave up and were taken into custody by the Department of Justice, assisted by our incredible U.S. military with professionalism and precision, with no loss of U.S. life. After securing the indicted persons, the force began to prep for departure.
I think that's really fascinating. I think it's really, really fascinating, all of that. And something else to think about here, by the way, is that the amount of military might that was sent in to get one guy. But at the same time, that's a lot less than it takes for a full ground invasion. A lot less. You got to think about blood and treasure. How much is actually worth it? There's nothing like the U.S. military. This truly was an unbelievable operation. And I want you to think about this. You've got people on the left criticizing President Trump for this operation, which sounds meticulous. No American deaths, very few American injuries. You obtained your objective. I mean, this is incredible. And they celebrated Joe Biden's disastrous withdrawal from Afghanistan. Oh, it's the largest airlift in history. Never mind the fact that we brought over a whole bunch of terrorists and illegal aliens, and who knows who we even brought over. But it was the largest airlift. Never mind that we abandoned the Afghanis to the Taliban and a whole bunch of women to abject slavery under Sharia law. But it was the largest airlift in history. Yeah, I'm sure you could have said that about our evacuation of Vietnam, too. They praised Joe Biden for that debacle when America looked weak. You know what's happening right now? Every foreign leader who's an enemy of the U.S. is making the following calculation. Do I play ball with them, or am I next? Look, here's the thing. There were Chinese weapons in Venezuela. They do business with China. Doesn't seem like they were that effective, or maybe they were never trained how to use them. It seems like Ukraine is able to defeat or hold their own against Russia with our weapons. It seems like those Russian weapons ain't working so well. There is nothing like American military might. This was an amazing operation. I can't wait for the movie. I really cannot. Well, sorry, Hollywood's never gonna make the movie, are they? If Barack Obama had been in office, there would be not just one, but two movies back to back about the capture, the killing of Osama bin Laden. Weren't there two of those movies? Zero Dark 30 and the other one. The other one everybody forgets about, but there were two of those movies. They came out within the year, right? I want to see the movie of this. I want to see the movie of Operation Grim Beeper in Lebanon. I want to see all these movies. They're never going to get made because it wasn't done by a Democrat. We go to the Warrior Injury Law Studio line. Take a call from Jay in Des Moines. Jay, what's up, man?
Hello, Ari. Happy New Year. I got a quick question for you. Do you think it's wise to announce to the world in detail the U.S. military operations to capture Nicolas Maduro? I mean, we just told the whole world, what we did. We flew 100 feet above this water, and we did this, and we did that. I just think, why not keep it a secret? Now everybody's going to know, and now everybody's going to expect the same thing.
You know what? You raise a great point. Let me be intellectually honest for a second here. Do you remember the criticism that Barack Obama got for announcing that we got Osama bin Laden immediately rather than waiting for us to... Right. But do you remember that they had all this intelligence that was going to lead them to other terrorists that was now compromised because they knew we had raided his compound, so all that information was now compromised, and it actually cost us in going after terrorists. So that's a fair point you bring up, Jay. However, let me back it up with another one, and I don't know the answer here, okay? I think you raise a very important question. Here's the other thing. We didn't do this the same way we went after bin Laden. I don't think you can do it again. It's like the beeper operation with Hezbollah. You can't do it again because they already know what happened the first time. So by saying all this stuff, it was pretty detailed, but not detailed enough. But at the same time, could you actually do it again? And look, if we hadn't advertised it, they would have down the road to try and compromise all that. I think you need to come up with new operations each time. I don't think you can keep doing the same thing. But you do raise a legitimate point. In fact, Jay, I remember this old skit in Saturday Night Live. It was Kevin Nealon. You remember him from the 90s? He was the Weekend Update guy.
Well, I stopped watching after they stopped being funny.
Okay, this is back when they were still kind of funny. So it was during the first Iraq War, and you've got Kevin Nealon. He's the press secretary, and he goes, "All right, we're going to go in from the north, and we're going to bring in these tanks, and we're going to bring in these planes, and we're going to bring in this many soldiers." And they go, and what kind of weapons will they be using? Will they be using M16s and M4s and all this? Oh, and what time are they having lunch? I'm sorry, that's classified. You're reminded. I now have to go find that skit because I remember it being pretty funny. It was with the Dana Carvey, Mike Myers, Kevin Nealon, Chris Farley. It was in those years. It was sometime around there. So it was back when I still thought they were funny. Jay, excellent question, though. I'm going to do some research into that, okay?
All right. Good to talk to you. Have a good night.
You as well, my friend. Appreciate the call. Appreciate you being part of the show. You want to be part of the show, you give us a call or text at 206-421-5757. That's 206-421-5757. John in Auburn says, Ari, it's become an FAFO scenario for the rest of the world. Mess with Trump and find out. I think you're right, but I think it's a little different than that. I think what it is do you want to be our friend or do you want to be next? This is peace through strength. There are too many people on our side who say Trump's an isolationist. Can you give me one example of Trump being an isolationist? With the tariffs, with the Abraham Accords, with all the different peace deals, with this, with al-Bakawi. Can you give me one example of him being an isolationist? No, it's peace through strength. John in Lakewood, thank you. The Hurt Locker was the other one. Yes, exactly right. There are movies about the raids on Entebbe and Osirak, both good. I haven't seen the Osirak one. I read the book about taking out Saddam Hussein's nuclear plant. I did see both movies on Entebbe, Operation Thunderball and, crud, it's escaping me, the other one. And then, of course, there's the one that you all know. You may not know you've seen the movie before. You all know Operation Delta Force with Chuck Norris. You all know that movie? You all know what it's based on, right? That's based on the raid in Entebbe that the Israeli forces did to get back their hostages on an airplane in Uganda. It was based on that. Yeah, this one here. Good evening, Ari and Big Mike. Steve from Shoreline here. If our ferries are polluting the air so much, wouldn't they qualify for Climate Commitment Act funds? Isn't that what Jay Inslee wanted to do? Spend the money on boats? I like boats. I like big boats. When I was a kid, I used to play with them in the bathtub. Trudy and I still play with them in the bathtub. We like our little plastic ships. Yeah. Now Venezuelan president, this according to Bob in Portland, started mouthing off but quickly changed her tune. I suspect someone told her all of Venezuela is now hers and she should stay off Trump's radar. Yeah, that was something I heard from KVI News at the top of the hour where they were talking about who's going to replace Maduro. And his vice president type lady, she's as bad as he is. That's just trading one dictator for another. I really want to know what the day after plan is. I kind of am very, very curious about that. Now, Marco Rubio articulately said what the day after plan is. He said yesterday that the Iran-backed Lebanese terrorist movement Hezbollah will no longer have operations in the South American state. The Iranian regime-backed Hezbollah terrorist organization is responsible for both bombing of the U.S. embassy, which killed 63 people, and the Marine barracks bombing in Beirut in 1983 when 241 U.S. military personnel were killed. Speaking on CBS's Face the Nation, Rubio said it's very simple. In the 21st century, under the Trump administration, we are not going to have a country like Venezuela in our own hemisphere, in the sphere of control, and the crossroads for Hezbollah, for Iran, and for every other malign influence in the world. That's just not going to exist. He also told NBC's Meet the Press that in regard to Venezuela, that meant no more Iran-Hezbollah presence there. Do you guys now understand foreign relations a little bit more? I know a lot of people think America first, let's just focus on America. Do you realize that by having Hezbollah in our backyard is a bad thing? Do you want to have rockets coming at you from Venezuela? We were worried about rockets coming at us from Cuba in the 1950s. Do you realize what happens if you let the bad guys get control? Okay, these are our borders. This is my dance space. That's your dance space. You don't come into my dance space. I don't go into your dance space. But the problem is we have a pretty big dance space. And if you want to keep America secure, you can't have Canada taken over by China. You can't have South America taken over by Iran and Hezbollah. And that's exactly what happened. Something that's gotten lost in all the amazingness of the Venezuela operation, Maduro was meeting with Chinese officials when this was happening. Why do you think he was meeting with Chinese officials? The Chinese officials were still on the ground expecting more meetings the next day, and then poof, Maduro's gone. I mean, that was such a message of strength to send that you cannot mess with us. China does not have a lot of oil. They were getting their oil from Venezuela. President Trump told Chevron, hey guys, you have that deal with the oil in Venezuela. You can keep your deal, but realize you're an American company and we're setting the rules. And Chevron goes, yep, whatever you want, no problem. That way they're not selling it to China. Now China is a little bit more restricted than they were before. Why are there riots, uprisings in Iran right now? Because all of this is connected. Iran right now has no money. They have no economy. And because of that, people can rise against the government, and the government can only control them so long because eventually your soldiers want to get paid. Your government officials want to get paid. The Ayatollah wants to keep his palace. The Ayatollah, according to some unconfirmed reports, is now talking about fleeing to Russia. You now realize this is peace through strength. We did one bombing run, one, and we took out Iran's nuclear capability. We take one dictator down, and now the rest of the world is going, who's next, who's next? You know why they're so mad over at the UN right now? Because they're worried they're next. It is the most vicious hive of scum and villainy in the galaxy in the UN. There are terrible, terrible people there. This is what peace through strength looks like. Now, what does that mean for you at home? Is America more secure? But it means something else. If the largest oil reserves in the U.S. are now accessible to U.S. consumers, what does that do for your gas prices? Yes, even here in Washington state, it will start bringing them down. If there's so much production, then guess what, my friends? You have a lot of supply. And if there's a lot of supply to meet a lot of demand, prices are cheaper. And if you don't have to pay as much for gas, your groceries get cheaper, your goods get cheaper, everything gets cheaper. Do you now see how all this is connected? Peace through strength, economy through strength. Do you now see how all this is connected? Really, really, really fascinating. I'm kind of wondering what the day after is going to be. Marco Rubio seems to have it in hand, making sure that Hezbollah is not working with Maduro anymore because they started working with Hugo Chavez when he went full communist over there. Now we have to worry about is Hezbollah working with the mayor of New York City. Lots more to discuss as the show continues, my friends. When we come back, the story nobody is paying attention to, but could show the links between the cartels, Homeless Inc., and Seattle Public Schools. But before we get to any of that, Todd Herman's Daily Thoughtcast, right now on The Ari Hoffman Show. Welcome back to the Ari Hoffman Show. Just a reminder, coming up at 5:30 today, we're going to have Mike Solon from the Seattle Police Officers Guild weighing in on this whole insanity with Katie Wilson decriminalizing drugs here in Seattle. We'll have that for you. Make sure you're listening at 5:30. We go to the Warrior Injury Law studio line, take a call from Charles, who's in a truck in Venezuela. Wait, that's not in Venezuela. He wants to talk about Venezuela. How you doing, Charles? What's going on?
Crap, you got me off guard.
Sorry. I make people laugh. It's what we do here. Yes.
Yeah. You know, there's a reason why I was, I'm a disabled veteran. So, excuse me.
Oh, thank you for your service, sir.
Why they refer to this as an after actions report and not a prior actions report. You don't give out the information of a mission that you're going to take on, so everybody in the world knows how it's done by our previous administrators.
Right.
So now that, you know, the thing, and President Trump said this, and you know, in the first time, his first administration, is we're going to do it. We're going to get it done, but I'm not going to tell you until it's after it's done.
Yep.
Because the other guys are doing just like that old show that you were talking about. Well, we're going to go in with 357 Abram tanks and oh, by the way, lunch is top secret.
Yeah, exactly. And also, I think it sends a message of, yeah, we did it. Yeah, we have the capability to do it. Do you want us to do it again because we can? I think it sends that message too, don't you think?
Oh, yeah. That's one of the big things is we did this. You know we did this. You have the information and the evidence that we did this. Now, do you want to try it on us?
Right, exactly. It's a real FA-FO situation, right? You guys really want to mess with us? Then you know what's coming next, just like with the Iran bombing.
Yeah, I tell you, there's so many politicians that need to go in and see a serious proctologist for their activities, I tell you.
To remove a certain thing from a certain place is what you're saying, I believe, sir, right?
Oh, yeah, we just call them the Roto-Rooter team.
Charles, thank you for the call. Appreciate you being part of the show. You want to be part of the show, you give us a call or a text at 206-421-5757. That's 206-421-5757. From El Darthbo, he says, when is our president going to tell the UN to take a hike? Turn the UN into a glorified homeless shelter. That's about all it's good for. I was driving up the West Side Highway the other day in Manhattan. And if you are driving up the West Side Highway, which means you're driving north in Manhattan, you look to your right when you're coming out of lower Manhattan, there's a whole bunch of buildings that used to say Trump on them. I didn't notice the Trump this time. I wonder if they took the name off, whatever the case may be, but they were Trump company buildings. And I actually think I was driving on the East Side Highway at one point, too. I went down the East Side, came up the West Side, and I drove past the UN. And I actually pointed it out to my daughter, who is not that familiar with New York, and I go, that's the UN. That's the most awful place in the world. And I thought, how great would it be to turn that into the Trump Hotel, Library, and Casino? That's right. Don't build it. Just take it through eminent domain, right? It would be a tourist attraction for New York. Mamdani would get more tax money. He could get tax money from Trump's library. Why are we not doing this? Yes, okay. I think that is the best idea. Forget this idea for Florida. I think instead of a homeless shelter, instead of a parking garage, instead of a place for illegal aliens, instead of like Alligator Alcatraz or whatever it is, I just say we turn it into the Trump Library, the Trump Hotel, Library, and Casino. I think that's what we should do with the UN. Don't you? Let me know what you think. 206-421-5757. That's 206-421-5757. This next story is from our friend Jeremy Harris over at Como News, one of the few remaining real reporters in our area. And it actually shows the links between cartels, Homeless Inc., nonprofits, and Seattle Public Schools. According to Como News, federal prosecutors have expanded the case against the Kent family that is accused of running a large drug trafficking ring to distribute fentanyl across western Washington. In a superseding indictment filed in U.S. District Court in Seattle in December, the Department of Justice added 9 defendants to the Jackson Drug Trafficking Organization case, the DTO case, as well as charges related to prostitution. The case originated in 2022 when the FBI and DEA began looking into Marquis Jackson, the alleged ringleader of the organization. His mother, Marty Jackson, is a well-known community activist who ran the nonprofit group SE Network Safety Net, which have been given lucrative contracts to provide violence interruption in Seattle public schools. So the people who were tasked with replacing the police after the police were kicked out of Seattle public schools were running a drug trafficking ring. According to the charges, Marty Jackson laundered money for the DTO, which was led by Markey, as well as her husband, Mandel Jackson. According to the December indictment, 23 defendants faced charges, including conspiracy to distribute controlled substances, conspiracy to commit money laundering, distribution of a controlled substance, possession with intent to manufacture and distribute a controlled substance, and conspiracy to commit transportation for prostitution through coercion. You know what we need to do, Mike? You know what we haven't done? I see this report. We haven't looked up in the Washington State checkbook how much money they got from us. So we were talking earlier with Todd Myers, who is telling us if something doesn't smell right, find out how much money they got. You better believe that tonight I am going to look up how much this organization got from Washington state taxpayers. The initial 2024 indictment listed 14 defendants in the multi-state drug trafficking conspiracy, which investigators said moved fentanyl between Washington, Georgia, Missouri, Texas, and Arizona. Quote, over the course of the investigation, law enforcement seized more than 846,000 fentanyl pills, nearly 7 kilograms of fentanyl powder, 7 kilograms of cocaine, and 29 firearms. They also seized more than $116,000 in cash, according to the U.S. Attorney's Office. In November, 44-year-old Michael Young Jr. of Tacoma was sentenced to 7 years in prison, marking the first guilty plea in the conspiracy case. Investigators said Young was a high-level member of the group. At Young's sentencing, U.S. District Judge Jamal Whitehead noted the danger created by the drug trafficking conspiracy. Quote, every pill you moved was a loaded gun. The sentence needs to hold you accountable for the lives you endangered. The remaining defendants in the case have all pleaded not guilty. Some are being held in custody at Federal Detention Center in SeaTac, while others are on pre-trial release. So let me make sure I got this right. An anti-police community alternative was given taxpayer money to replace the police in Seattle public schools. Instead, they were trafficking in drugs. We're all clear about what this means, right? So, how much of your taxpayer money was being used in these cartel operations? Tonight, I will be digging into how much money these guys got of your taxpayer dollars. And I want to give a big kudos to Jeremy Harris. This case is a few years old. He dug it up. He's been following it when nobody else in the media has. I haven't seen the story on a single other outlet. He's following this story because it's important and because it could be the links between corrupt nonprofits, Seattle public schools, your taxpayer money, and drug cartels. And one reporter is covering it. One. That's the mess of our media here in Washington. Everybody should be covering this. Oh, there's no fraud. Right, Nick Brown? Right? By the way, if Nick Brown wanted an easy win, he would go after this and say, we're going after fraud. Look at the fraud. This is how much money they got. Yeah, I don't think that's going to happen. What happened to all the drug assets we seized from these guys? Are we going to use that to repay the taxpayers for all the money these guys got? We come back, my friends. Speaking of drugs, were police in Seattle ordered not to arrest people for drug crimes and to divert them to treatment, which they're never actually going to get? Seattle Police Officer Guild President Mike Solon joins us when we come back. You're listening to The Ari Hoffman Show on Talk Radio 570 KVI. Yesterday, there was a bit of a brouhaha because internationally, the story went viral about how the Seattle Police Department was ordered by its chief, Sean Barnes, as we call him Chief Wiggum, that they shouldn't be arresting for crimes involving open-use drugs and instead be diverting them to a failed diversionary program, which is just a revolving door of justice that doesn't keep anybody in jail, which has led to the problems on the streets of Seattle for the better part of a decade. Now, at the center of this was an email that was leaked to several people, including our friend Andrea Suarez from We Heart Seattle, where these orders were given. The problem was, at the time, not many people had actually seen the email. So a bunch of us reached out to the Seattle Police Department for comment. They then sent a mass email out saying, it's all misinformation, don't believe anything in it, here's the email. And then when you read the email, Andrea was spot on. Everybody who put this out there was spot on because the email literally said, we are not going to be arresting people, we're going to be diverting them into this failed treatment program. Of course, our friend Mike Solon from the Seattle Police Officers Guild comes out with some very strong words about this very, very dumb decision. And then everybody's crosshairs move over to Mike from the city because they start trying to demonize him, even though he was 100% right in criticizing these guys. That's me giving you the entire catch-up scenario. Joining us now on the Warrior Injury Law studio line is President of Seattle Police Officers Guild, Mike Solon. Thanks so much for being with us today.
Happy to be here, Ari. Good job breaking it down.
Thank you. I was going to say, do you think that's an accurate representation of what happened?
Yeah, I think that that's spot on. And again, it's our leadership that get voted into office by less than 30% of our community that push this unreasonable activism on all of us. So we all have to suffer. So, and of course, they're pivoting and claiming it's misinformation when you just brilliantly articulated that it's actual fact. And of course, the covering local media clearly don't hold the candle to underneath our political leaders as they should. And it takes great people like you and other grassroots efforts such as We Heart Seattle and other entities and influencers to address this. And slowly but surely, this stuff is getting out. It went viral yesterday for sure.
Yeah, I couldn't believe that it was still going viral. I think I got 2 or 3 posts about this that are still getting traction. So let's be clear about what happened. They said we're going to divert them to treatment instead of arresting them. Then they lied. And then when everybody called them out on it, they said it was misinformation. What are we, back to the Biden administration when everything was misinformation, disinformation, when you call them out on their lies? So here's the part I'm unclear about. It seems like the city attorney, Eric Evans, who only got sworn in today, issued this directive to the Seattle Police Department, and Katie Wilson was not involved. But Katie Wilson says, when I have something to say, you're going to hear it. But yet on the city's website, it's exactly this mantra, and it's something she's been talking about this whole time. Is she free of blame? Is it the city attorney is just as progressive as she is? Or is it she's lying and she's part of this whole mess?
Well, I think everything that you just, again, articulated well is all part of this whole dilemma. And their inability to properly lead and cover this is being exposed in front of our eyes. And they don't know what to do. And I think it's clear that, hey, if anything, there's ambiguity, all you got to do is, hey, it's misinformation, and then move on. And that's not how this world works, particularly in the public safety land where people scream for more police accountability. Again, time and time again, it's these unreasonable activists who aren't accountable themselves. And it takes great work by you and other people that care and that live in the lane of truth to highlight this. And again, we need more pressure to right the ship, if you will.
Well, thank you. I appreciate the kind words. Let's dive into what's happening with the department right now. You're advocating for your officers. You're advocating for law enforcement. But an average street cop is going to say, I don't want to deal with this noise and get out of here. Is that what you're hearing from the officers?
Well, that's what we hear. That's what, I put it in our press release. People can find it at SPOG 1952 on X about that most officers feel that this is a waste of time. And I covered this in my podcast yesterday that was just released today that covers that same takeaway, but also most officers feel is that the lead program and strategy is a waste of money as well. So here we go again. It's the same nonsense that devolves further the public safety predicament in this city, which puts all of us in just an untenable predicament of what's based in common sense. It's awful. And I just don't understand why these people continue to climb the ladders of power and put us all in this predicament. It's bizarre to me.
Well, I'll give you a little story that I'm not sure I ever shared with you, Mike. I met with Lisa Dugard, who's the person who's in charge of the LEAD program, or was in charge of the LEAD program. And I met with her when I was running for Seattle City Council. And she was worried because I was exposing their BS as part of the things I was saying on the campaign trail. And she wanted to meet with me to set the record straight. And I said, great, give me your data. Let me see your success. And she couldn't produce it. She had every excuse under the sun about why she couldn't produce it. And yet that non-existent data was what New York City used as the basis for the bail reform law, which releases criminals nonstop. They start having problems with it from day one. So this is now being pushed to the rest of the country. The stupid in Seattle is now spreading for a program that's been a failure. It's never been a success. But now you have the mayor, the city attorney, and the police chief all doubling, tripling, quadrupling down on it.
Well, again, if you go to the city website, you'll find the diversion program laid out in plain English. And there's an actual link you could go to where it's called Crisis Response Unit, the case for pre-arrest diversion in co-responder public safety response. And so if it's misinformation, then why do you publicize this on your city website? Like, then what is truth? Is everything misinformation? How can they lead like this? None of this makes any sense. And it's the taxpayers that get the brunt of this nonsense. So again, at the end of the day, this all circles back to people participating in the electoral process. We're in charge of our own destiny. If we don't engage the 70% that does not vote, then we're doomed.
Yeah.
And everybody's going to get blamed with being misinformation or alt-right conspiracy people when the truth will live, and we just got to continue to press and push and not be afraid of repercussions of people talking bad about us.
Yeah, and I think this week alone, let's see, what have I been called along with Jonathan Cho, Cam Higbee, Carlene Johnson, and others? Let's see, we've been called extremist influencers, vigilantes, and racists, if I'm not mistaken. I think I covered the majority of the big ticket items because we're literally reading their own emails, because we're reading their own statements, because we're exposing this craziness and this fraud. Mike Solon, really appreciate you joining us today. God bless you. God bless all of your officers.
Good man. All right. Appreciate you.
Always appreciate having you. We got a whole lot more to discuss as the show continues. You're listening to the Ari Hoffman Show on Talk Radio 570 KVI. Only good news to wrap up another amazing episode of the Ari Hoffman Show right here on Talk Radio 570 KVI. Now, I saw this story, and I told Mike I was going to do this story, and he's like, that's not good news. I said, it is good news. It's a really cool story. Has a quasi-happy ending. According to Fox News, a massive boulder prop veered off course during Disney World's Indiana Jones stunt show Tuesday, striking a cast member who courageously tried to halt the rampaging prop. Now, you all know the prop. It's the giant boulder from the opening scene of Indiana Jones and Raiders of the Lost Ark. In the stunt show down in Florida, they reenact that sequence. That's what it is. The tense moment during the Indiana Jones epic stunt spectacular at Hollywood Studios was captured on video by an audience member and quickly went viral. Now, that big sucker has got to be weighted. Otherwise, the cast member who stopped it wouldn't have been injured. This isn't just some big piece of foam. It's got to have weight to it or it's not going to go the way it needs to go. In the footage, a giant ball rolled out from behind the scenes during the show's temple sequence. It traveled down an elevated track, hit a wall from the side, and suddenly bounced off the platform. As it hurtled toward the audience, a staff member bravely ran up to the boulder, trying to intercept the prop. The cast member was then quickly knocked down by the force as other employees rushed to help him. When he got up, the back of his shaved head was covered in blood. Well, yeah, you got knocked down by this giant boulder. The prop ricocheted back toward the stage away from the audience where staff were able to safely recover it. In a statement to Fox News Digital, Disney said it will not release the condition of the member to respect his privacy, but noted that he is recovering. Quote, "We're focused on supporting our cast member who is recovering." Disney said the park will also modify that scene of the show after the incident. Quote, "Safety is at the heart of what we do, and that element of the show will be modified as our safety team completes a review of what happened." I think the whole story is insane, but also the fact that a random dude who's probably, Disney pays okay, but still threw himself in front of this giant hurtling object to save the audience. This could have been a lot worse. What if a kid got hurt? What if somebody decided to sue the park? Whatever the case may be. This always takes you down that dark road to the dead people at Disneyland or any of the Disney parks for that matter. Nobody dies at Disney. See, this dude's going to be perfectly fine. But still, working for Disney, he threw himself in front of the object, in front of the giant boulder to stop it from ricocheting towards the audience. That's huge. That's really, really huge. There are websites of all the people who have died at Disney. The story could have ended a lot differently. And you may think, what damage could a giant fake boulder do? It's got to be weighted to go down that track the way it goes down. I've seen that stunt show before. You've all seen the movie before, right? There's a reason Indiana Jones is running from that sucker. Yeah. And the fact that knocked him down, it flattened him. If you watch the video, it really knocked him down. But he threw himself in front of the audience. Yeah, Mr. KVI right there trying to catch the ball himself as he's trying it right there. Yeah, you're not going to catch the sucker going that fast, but you did deflect it away from the audience. Meanwhile, I got this other story here. This one about Bondi Beach, a cascading delay into Los Angeles. This is a story from one of the flight blogs called A View from the Wing. Into Los Angeles was about to keep travelers from reaching the funeral of the Sunni rabbi who was killed in the Bondi Beach attacks. United wouldn't hold its flight, but American Airlines did something airlines almost never do. It moved gates to eliminate the terminal scramble, held its own Sydney departure, then comped a new ticket entirely. What followed was a behind-the-scenes relay from cockpit to operations to the gate that turned an impossible connection into a just-in-time arrival for the funeral. American Airlines has started holding flights for connecting passengers when possible in limited circumstances. For one customer, though, it went further than I can recall any airline going before, the blogger writes. So what happens is the grieving passenger was about to miss Sydney. The airline pulled off a sequence that reads like a fiction, a gate swap to eliminate a terminal sprint, a crew and ops relay waiting at the door, and a trans-Pacific departure that stayed on the ground just long enough to get him on board at no charge so he could make it to the funeral in time. According to Dan's Deals, which is a travel deal website, 4 longtime friends were chatting in a WhatsApp group. They've kept going since school. News broke of the Bondi Beach attack in Sydney where a terrorist hit the Hanukkah by the Sea event. Rabbi Eli Schlanger was killed. His wife was badly wounded, and his infant was struck by shrapnel. We all heard about that tragedy before we went offline for the holidays. What happened was 3 friends in the U.S. decided they needed to get to Sydney, even though they didn't know the funeral would even be there. They booked United award tickets using transfer Chase points. Then they were going to meet up for the United flight, but the connecting times collapsed. New York, JFK, Los Angeles ran on time, but the Miami flight faced rolling delays. It looked like he wasn't going to make it of the separate ticket on United. This is what happens when you book with miles. This is why I don't do stopovers. While the JFK passenger waited in Los Angeles, he messaged American on Twitter about the situation, asking for help. American's Twitter team may not have the personality and sense of humor it did years ago, but they're the best at responsiveness. So they messaged back. They'd alerted Los Angeles on the ground, suggested he asked United for help as well, so that way he wouldn't miss his connecting flight. 2 of the friends met at the United gate, spoke with the agent there. They already had the Miami passenger's boarding pass printed, notes about his inbound American flight. They weren't going to hold the flight, but they would stay alert for options. On board that flight from Miami to LA, a flight attendant brought the passenger a note. American has coordinated with United. They can't hold 839, but American will hold their own LA-Sydney flight if he wants to buy a ticket for it. And that's exactly what happened. American's Sydney flight departed from the terminal, and they were able to make it on time. At the gate, American tells them they're not just accommodating him, they're comping his ticket to Sydney. The American flight pushed back for Sydney 19 minutes after the Miami flight came to the gate. Both the United and American flights made announcements asking everyone to remain seated so those passengers could get off first. They had to head straight to the rabbi's funeral. Both airlines provided escorts through immigration and customs. On landing, they learned the funeral time and arrived moments before the funeral began. This is really incredible, this whole story, because usually airlines don't work with each other. Usually airlines are out for themselves. I mean, look, you don't see other airlines going out to the end gates at SeaTac Airport because that's where Alaska is. But here, United and American Airlines actually worked together to make sure they pulled this thing off. Really, really incredible for competitors to do that. The blogger wrote, I have to give it to American. That's caring for people on life's journey. It wasn't a great slogan, but they made it work. While I've had my share of criticism of American, I've also found them to go above and beyond and do the right thing on many occasions. Changing a gate at arrival is plausible. Gates get swapped constantly, but not usually for a passenger, not usually for a competing airline. Seats get moved forward for quick deplaning when available, and crew frequently ask passengers to stay seated for short connections, but they don't always take them through customs afterwards. Anyway, this is a very, very nice story. It actually puts American and United, 2 airlines that I don't fly so often, if ever anymore, in a much more positive light. In fact, I think I almost missed my grandfather's funeral because of American Airlines. We won't get into that. We'll give them the kudos that is deserved. Me, I'm an Alaska Airlines guy. That's right. I like my Alaska Airlines, and now that they're doing international travel where I can use my miles again for the international travel to go see my kids over in Israel, yeah, I don't think I'm going anywhere else but Alaska for a very, very long time. But still, this is a very, very nice story to come out of American and United Airlines, which don't always have the best news all of the time. Well, tomorrow's episode, my friends, we're going to dive deeper into the fraud scandals that are shaking Washington because one of our mainstream media outlets has actually picked up the story and is not letting go of it. You guys helped change the narrative. We will tell you which outlet that is tomorrow. Plus, we'll have a whole lot other fun for you. We will be back tomorrow with more insane stories, more exciting guests, and more good news stories, hopefully not about giant boulders loose from Disney. You've been listening to The Ari Hoffman Show on Talk Radio 570 KVI.